A few years ago, a very strange object entered the solar system, immediately puzzling experts. Named Oumuamua, this flying object not only had an extremely unusual composition and no comet-like coma, but also exhibited flight behavior that simply could not be explained by the influence of gravity alone. In the aftermath, there was only one question left. What on earth is Oumuamua really? Is it just an unusual, but purely natural outgrowth of the cosmos? Or could it be that an extraterrestrial civilization has sent a spaceship to our home system? In fact, the alien theory is not only circulating in relevant internet forums. It was first put forward by a renowned Harvard professor. But now, astronomers believe that they have finally uncovered the true origins of our interstellar visitor. So stay tuned until the end if you want to know what mysterious object really set course for the solar system back then. On October 19, 2017, modern space exploration reached a significant milestone. This was the day when Robert Warwick, using the Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii, identified an object in the solar system that was clearly classified as interstellar. Despite this, the initial euphoria soon gave way to great confusion. The characteristics of this special visitor were so unusual that no scientist knew what we were dealing with. Named Oumuamua, which means leader or scout, experts initially suspected that it was a comet. However, this classification was short-lived. Follow-up observations revealed neither a tail nor a coma, typical of comets. And so it came to pass that just 1 week after its discovery, there was an astronomical U-turn, and Oumuamua was henceforth considered an asteroid. But anyone who thought that the mystery had been solved was premature in their celebrations. The object exhibited flight behavior that turned all known asteroid patterns on their head. But first things first, when Oumuamua was first detected in October 2017, it was already on its way back into interstellar space. Calculations showed that it had already passed its perihelion, the point closest to the Sun, on September 9th. And while the object had approached our host star to within 37.6 million kilometers, it then did something that left astronomers scratching their heads. More specifically, the trajectory analysis revealed a surprising acceleration. In other words, as Oumuamua moved away from the Sun, it flew slightly faster than the pure influence of gravity would have allowed. But what was the reason for this unexpected burst of speed? Well, that was precisely the question that immediately caught the attention of experts. Initially, the outgassing of volatile components was discussed as a possible explanation. This was not particularly surprising, as such a process is anything but unusual and sometimes occurs when a body is heated up significantly. More specifically, such additional acceleration can occur when ice evaporates under the influence of the sun's heat and the gases released create a recoil. On the other hand, however, this approach also had a decisive drawback. Normally, outgassing is accompanied by a significant change in rotational behavior, and this simply could not be detected in Oumuamua. The mystery of Oumuamua deepened. In order to get to the bottom of its true origins, researchers pointed virtually every telescope available to them at the moment. In doing so, they discovered that it is subject to unusually strong fluctuations in brightness, which conversely means nothing other than that its shape resembles a giant cigar. Unfortunately, however, the data collected was not sufficient to reconcile these fluctuations in brightness with a corresponding rotational behavior. This led to the conclusion that Oumuamua is not rotating around one of its main axes, but is instead literally tumbling through space. No less surprising was the fact that no dust was found in the immediate vicinity of the object. Against this background, experts assumed that it does not contain water and may even be made entirely of metal. However, when it came to determining its exact dimensions, scientists had to resort to estimates due to a lack of concrete information. Depending on the values entered for reflectivity, density, internal tensile strength, and axis of rotation, different dimensions result. According to these estimates, it's possible that Oumuamua is only 100 or even 800 meters long. The situation was similarly vague when it came to its origin. All that is known is that it probably originated somewhere in the constellation Lyra. Shortly after being classified as an asteroid, Oumuamua was reclassified as a comet, or at least as one of several possibilities. Some studies conclude that it's more likely to be a body made of frozen hydrogen. However, Oumuamua may also be a fragment of nitrogen ice that was once blown off a Pluto-like celestial body. But what if none of these classifications actually correspond to cosmic reality? What if the object does not have a natural origin at all, but is instead an artificially created structure that was sent into the solar system for research purposes? Well, then we would be right back where we started, with a sensational theory put forward by Harvard professor Avi Loeb about Oumuamua being the work of an extraterrestrial civilization. To understand how Avi Loeb views the topic of extraterrestrial life, it's worth taking a quick look at his background. Born on February 26, 1962, in Beit Hanan, Israel, Loeb is not exactly what you would call an undisputed researcher. Among other things, the astrophysicist claimed to have found mysterious objects at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean that could indicate, quote, extraterrestrial technology. Specifically, he is referring to hundreds of tiny spheres of interstellar origin that Loeb claims to have found in the remains of a meteorite. And perhaps you also remember the alleged alien mummies that were presented in the Mexican Parliament in September 2023. And now, guess which Harvard professor was connected live at that time to report on the search for extraterrestrial objects in the atmosphere and solar system. With this background information in mind, Loeb's assumptions about Oumuamua are not particularly surprising. It could actually be the work of an advanced alien civilization. The observed acceleration and lack of dust formation would correspond exactly to the characteristics expected from an extremely thin object with a large surface area. Against this background, Loeb speculated that Oumuamua could be an extraterrestrial solar sail, a body propelled by the radiation pressure of the sun or another star. And, astonishingly, this idea was not categorically ruled out by the rest of the research community. On the contrary, Oumuamua was actually targeted by the radio telescope at the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia to search for potential signals of artificial origin. Ultimately, however, the data collected over a period of 2 weeks painted a sobering picture. No evidence of artificial signals was found. Has the mystery of Oumuamua finally been solved? Since 2017, there has been hardly any other object that has caused as much confusion among experts as Oumuamua. But then, in March 2023, the redeeming news finally came. A team of astronomers had succeeded in deciphering the mysterious visitor and uncovering the reason for its unexpected acceleration. So, have all the unanswered questions about Oumuamua finally been resolved once and for all? Well, let's take a look at things in order. One thing is certain. No researcher has ever seen a comet that does not have a dust coma and accelerates in such a strange way as Oumuamua. But then Daryl Seligman and his colleague Jennifer Bergner managed to reconcile the strange circumstances with a plausible theory. According to this theory, the solution to the space mystery is called hydrogen propulsion. The researchers came to this conclusion after examining a series of laboratory experiments conducted between the 1970s and 90s. The test series showed that water ice can break down into molecular hydrogen under the influence of intense cosmic radiation, and a body moving through the interstellar medium is literally cooked by this radiation. In view of this, it seems reasonable to conclude that Oumuamua also formed hydrogen. The problem, however, is that the speed boost near the sun can only be explained if the hydrogen did not immediately escape into space. Conveniently, the experts had a suitable explanation for this. According to them, the hydrogen initially remained trapped in the pores of the ice. Calculations showed that this is anything but unlikely, and that most of the hydrogen formed in ice under interstellar conditions remains trapped in the water matrix. This only changes when the frosty cage warms up to temperatures between minus 258 degrees Celsius and minus 33 degrees Celsius. However, as long as this limit is not exceeded, the water ice remains amorphous, which means that it only crystallizes when heated to the appropriate temperature. And as Oumuamua plunged into the solar system, according to the theory, The sun's rays heated its outer crust, causing the water, ice, to change its structure. The pores that opened in the ice allowed the highly volatile hydrogen gas to escape. This also explains why the outgassing was invisible to scientists. The molecular hydrogen could not be identified by spectroscopic analysis. As a result, it appeared that the object had neither a coma nor a characteristic tail. And unlike the normal outgassing of comets, the escape of hydrogen would not produce any significant dust formation. Even if the ice matrix contained dust, it was most likely not torn out during outgassing. But is this special form of outgassing sufficient to explain the mysterious acceleration of Oumuamua? Well, yes, provided that the body is relatively compact. For an object measuring several kilometers, outgassing would probably have no significant influence on flight behavior. However, if the cigar-shaped structure is only 100 meters long and 20 meters thick, the process could have generated enough thrust to set the acceleration in motion. So far, so plausible. And yet, at this point, we should perhaps briefly note that these are, at the end of the day, purely theoretical considerations and models that, while providing a plausible explanation, have not been directly proven in relation to Oumuamua. What is certain, however, is that since the discovery of the interstellar visitor, a number of other small objects have been found that also have no tail or coma, and yet have undergone minor accelerations. Fortunately, it's also certain that we will soon have first-hand information on this. The Japanese space probe Hayabusa 2 is currently on its way to asteroid 1998 KY26, which it is scheduled to reach in 2031 and explore in detail. And now you're welcome to click on the subscribe button. Simply press the thumbs up and subscribe to never miss another video from us again. We'll see you soon. Ask ChatGPT.